Okay, this video is going to require notes. Normally I memorize, and I can memorize for a long time once I study a subject, but I don't want to miss anything here, and I really want to jam-pack this and get it done in the shortest amount of time as possible and do it with one single take. So with notes, holding this pad, after I've learned much news over recently and reading about it, and especially watching a great Nova special called Decoding COVID-19. And I want to follow actually that order and summarize basically what's going on here, what has happened, what's happening now, and what we hope to happen. So the main thing was in China that the discovery of this SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus was a zoonotic virus. That means it came from an animal, and its genome was checked by the Chinese and published in January, and it has derived from bats. But it didn't jump to humans through the bat, but through an intermediate animal, most likely a pangolin in a wet market. That's the prevailing theory, but no one knows exactly for sure that's the case. Now, it arrived in the United States first over in the West Coast in Washington State, and then it came on the East Coast, having gone from China to the Middle East and to Italy. There are many conventions in Italy, and Iran is a stopping point, refueling and such, for making that long journey in from the east-west trajectory to get to Europe. So there, it got there and it mutated. So this virus had a slight mutation and then came into the ports in New York mainly, and Chicago. So New York got hit the hardest because really the most amount of the virus came in this way. What happened after that? Well, Americans, we didn't take the precautions that the Chinese did, which is very strict and really impede on our freedoms in some ways. You know, just this is it, that's that, no questioning. There's no time for any democracy in this, and there's a cultural difference as to how we responded. Though in many respects I think we responded very well. There's also the double-edged sword of closing everything down. And when you go up to any leader, being the leader of the nation or the leader of a state, and just say, oh, by the way, you need to shut everything down and keep everyone away from each other. That's something that you can't take lightly. The repercussions of that in a capitalist economy where everything is in debt, and there's week to week, including corporations who borrow money to pay their employees. So that's a whole other discussion. So what happened from here? So the virus itself existed probably for hundreds of years inside the bats, maybe even thousands of years. There are hundreds of coronaviruses. 7 of them affect humans. 4 of them are the common cold. 4 coronaviruses are the common cold. So the coronavirus is named as such by June Almeida. She was a Scottish researcher, and she was extremely knowledgeable at using the electron microscope. The coronavirus is so small that if it were the size of the Earth, it wouldn't even compare to the size of the galaxy. It would actually compare to the size of the local group of galaxies. But that's a bad comparison, because who can know that? But the virus is so small that light can't see it. And how does it mean that light can't see it? It means the wavelength of light is too big. It'd be like trying to pick up a bean on a floor with using rowboat oars instead of tweezers. So they use an electron microscope, and they fired the electrons, and then they saw the virus. They saw like this silhouette of it, and it had these spikes coming out, and it reminded of June of it being a corona from an eclipse, being spikish and such like that. These are the proteins, these are the receptors which cling now to humans that's come through, and I'm going to get to that. So viruses itself have existed on Earth probably as long as life has. Who knows, in the first complex organisms began, proteins and molecules, viruses occurred. There are supposedly a quadrillion viruses. Now, that is a number that's unimaginable. It doesn't even fit within the description of astronomical. When we talk about how many stars are in the sky in the observable universe, trillion, billion, trillion. This doesn't even come close. It's a quadrillion. So forget about all the sand on the sea and all the stars in the universe and everything there. These are these viruses. Now, these viruses evolved with us along with all other life on Earth. When we learned our genome, the human genome, DNA, we found millions of fragments of viruses that have come part of our evolutionary history. And that goes to our antibodies and how we have knowledge when a foreigner comes inside our body, how to attack it. We already have in our DNA, babies have it in their DNA, how to attack this virus. Excuse me, I don't like to do this, but it's a lot of stuff and I'm going to try to jam it in here. So, what does this virus do? Okay, so this novel virus, supposedly coming from a bat and then jumping through another animal into humans. Through a mutation, its spike proteins, these little protrusions that come out of it, are essentially keys because of the shape of what they are, and there are millions of permutations on how these molecules can shape. It now can cling to the cells in our lungs and then get within the cell and then replicate. And when it replicates, it produces millions of them, billions of them, and our antibodies then go to work against them, but they go to work against us because there's just so much reaction, so much of a war effort trying to stop this thing and not knowing exactly what its armor is, how to pierce it, and we end up flooding ourselves, and this is how we get inflammation in our lungs where pneumonia develops so much that we can't breathe anymore. Now we need a ventilator, and then after that this is so low to try to get off of that. We are overcome by ourselves. We essentially kill ourselves with the knowledge that we know.